Should Nineveh escape judgment? That's the question today. Episode 59 of the Deep Dives.
Nineveh, 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 Nineveh.
I hope that makes it in.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I just want to give Chris something else to think about.
Right. That is you, Destry, right?
Hey, I did something new. Can y'all guess what it is?
It's remember Home Improvement, Wilson? You always just can see
Idio.
his head over the fence. That's kind of the vibe I'm getting right now. No, you're trying to fix your habit of getting away from the microphone.
Yes.
So you put that thing on there. And
I am.
Now it just conceals.
I was hoping you couldn't tell.
Right.
Can you tell?
Well, I don't know. I think most people. I think it's well known that this is the face people are wanting to look at.
That's true. It's true. This is a better.
Doesn't
look.
matter what's going on over there.
It is a better look for me. There's no question about it. Yeah, I tend to have a different sound during sound check than I do during the show.
Right.
So I'm sure this has been in this office for a couple of years. I'm sure nobody else has ever put their lips on it or breathed into it.
You're just inhaling 2 years worth of.
I'm going to lick it right now so I can
particulates.
make sure that other people get the experience.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, it's the community spit guard. I'm glad we can't see through that.
Anyway.
So what's going on?
Maybe I'll do this.
There you go. It's just
No, that's much better.
yeah.
We had a good class last night. So we started our next term at church, Marcus Point Baptiste Church. Gun Club, Wednesday night, 6:30. A106, Marcus Point Baptist Church. I forgot the address. Something 6.
W Street.
W Street.
Yeah.
And I had 10 people, I think. 10 people. It was fun.
Yeah. Well, so the way it usually works is we have several. I guess you can call them semesters, although they don't really follow the normal semester.
Yeah, I just call
track.
them terms.
Yeah.
Just whatever. Yeah.
And we started the new one, which for us doesn't always mean much because we just kind of keep trudging along.
Right.
Like
yeah.
we're right in the middle of a big Bible study on like things to come, Revelation,
Yes.
Ezekiel, those types of stuff.
Second horseman we're going to talk about next week, right?
Yeah, because we spent about 4 or 5 weeks on that first horseman because we're not really on a specific schedule. We're just going through it as fast as it goes.
Yep.
But we did recently start a new series on the gun portion because it's Gun Club. So we do guns, and God. Very rednecky.
Yes. It's appropriate.
Right. But we started a series on the mechanics of rifles, and you're doing that. So yeah.
So I brought in an AR last night and started talking about it. And you never really know where to start a class with any type of instruction until you know the audience. And last night was the first class, and if this is any indication, if history is any indication, in the next 2 weeks there'll be other people coming in and going, and some will stick and some won't.
Yeah.
So I wanted to wait until last night to see where we were, and I just did a basic 101. This is a rifle.
Right.
This is a rifle, but
there
it's
are
a
many
shotgun.
like it. This one is mine.
That's right. That's right. Very similar to that. I held up my AR, 5.56 223, and showed a little bit about that, and pistol grip shotgun also, and talked a little bit about how an AR shoots almost like a 22 as far as the kick goes, and why
very
that
similar
is.
caliber. I mean,
is
22 and 223.
Yeah.
They're only 1/1000th of an inch off from each other. And
they're so similar, it's just if anybody is watching or listening has never shot an AR and is kind of scared of ARs, I know why you're scared of ARs, because the media has told you that it's a bad thing. It's almost like it's alive, itself. It's big and black. Let me tell you something. It's awesome. It's a nice rifle.
Yeah.
And mine's a regular old Ruger. I've done nothing to it, zero to it, and it's a beautiful piece of machinery. It's solid. It shoots straight, and I think everybody should own an AR who is interested in rifles.
Right.
When I bought mine, excuse me, it was just a little over $300. It may have been $399. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Before COVID, now they're $699.
Right.
You know,
but still a very economical platform.
Yep.
It's very easy to take apart, put back together.
Right.
You know, you can strip the whole thing down and put it back together in like 5 minutes.
Right. We had a guy, Rob did that for us in 2018.
Yeah.
He broke one down in front of class and built it up again.
Yeah, we had a series on how to build your own.
Right. Yeah. So I probably won't be doing. I don't know exactly where I'm going to go with it, but just we talk about rifles for the last several terms. We've been talking about handguns and self-defense and environmental awareness and that type of thing. And your suggestion, and I agree, was to lighten it up a little bit because I started getting a little bit too serious about it.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take a little bit of time and have some more fun, and which we did last night, didn't we?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
We laughed for whatever reason.
Right.
The first thing was, Chris, you weren't there last night. I'll tell you what happened when I started. I had the AR, the big black gun, and I cleared it, and I had 2 or 3 other people clear it also. I'm holding it. They looked and made sure there wasn't a magazine in it, put their finger where the magazine is supposed to go. I had the bolt back, so they put their finger in the bolt and eyeballed it a couple of times. So 3 people cleared it. There's no ammo no ammo anywhere near the gun. The gun does not have ammo in it. The bolt is back, so it's a safe paperweight.
Right.
You know, and I'm holding it up like this, and I look out the window. And our pastor is looking inside. And I said out loud, I am so glad our pastor just came by and gave me the thumbs up whenever he saw me holding up the AR. I mean, how many other churches can that happen in? It was just perfect timing.
Right.
It wasn't Pastor Godfrey, but it was Jeffrey, our new connections pastor.
Oh, okay.
He's the one that he's around. He makes sure all the small groups are going well and helps grow them and all that stuff. But he was on board with it, you know.
Hey, that's cool.
And I mean, I transport them safely, but I have the from my office to the class is no more than 50 feet. I don't know, 75 feet. I have them in cases, but you can tell I'm carrying a firearm. I pass 30 people in there. Nobody even balks.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, our church has not just a gun group, but we have archery groups and, all kinds of different sports groups and stuff like that, too. So I don't think anyone's really a stranger to that site.
It reminds me whenever we're confronted with something like that, it reminds me how much I like this church.
Right.
It's just different, you know.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. So anyway, we talked about the AR and how perhaps you have to make up your own mind. Perhaps it's not the best weapon for home defense.
Right.
A couple of reasons. It's
and there are
long.
some who would disagree.
Yeah.
Perfectly valid. Everybody has their preferences.
Yep, that's right.
But yeah, if you're talking about like navigating small spaces, things like that, yeah.
It could. I mean, the butt of the gun can extend and whatever. It can be longer or shorter. That might help. I don't know. But regardless of that part, the projectile, unless you're using specific ammo, that projectile can go through.
Yeah.
It can go through walls pretty easily if it's just a regular off the rack or off the store. If it's a regular ammo, it can go through. And you've got to think about those things. That's one of the main safety rules. Know what your target and beyond.
Once that bullet leaves the barrel, you're responsible for everything in its path.
Right. There is a lawyer attached to every projectile.
Yep.
Every one, even if you get the range, you're responsible for that.
Yeah.
You know what's happening. So put that down and started talking about the second one, the pistol grip shotgun. It's, if you think about it, they're almost opposite, right?
Right.
They really are. The pistol, the AR for longer distance, pistol grip shotgun, perfect for this room. You know, I can aim over here and probably hit somebody at a 45-degree angle,
Right.
you know, almost, depending on the ammo also. And it's not necessarily, it won't go through firewall or won't go through drywall as easy. Blow a hole in it, but it will probably stay there, right?
Right.
That's good and bad. If you just need a spray, that's awesome. You know what I mean? If you're not that good of a shot, whatever, I don't know. But it's just another option for home defense.
Right. I've heard when I was growing up, I had a neighbor who would pack his own shotgun shells with rock salt that he would use for self-defense.
There you go.
Because it would, it wasn't lethal, but it would break the skin and burn.
That's a good idea.
Not recommending anything, just saying what my redneck neighbor used to do
Right.
back in
Some
Texas.
people do that, and that's that's what we do at Gun Club most of the time. At least I try to say these are options, and you make up your mind. We're not saying last thing I want if for us to have to go to court and go and say I've taught this as this is what it is.
Right.
This is what no, we're just saying what's out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, and make up our own mind. We actually advocate for people not to carry if that is a valid and active choice.
Right.
If you have tried and it's just not for you for whatever reason, then I applaud you. You know what I mean? You have tried to make it happen and it's just not for you. Awesome.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, if it's just uncomfortable, you're not comfortable with your attitude or your personality. If you've got a figurative hair trigger, I don't want you carrying.
Right.
But let's see if it's possible for you to carry. When my father was alive, my brothers and I didn't want him to carry. He's got a hair trigger. He's what are you looking at? Yeah, from New Hampshire. He went off
putting
really quick.
gunpowder behind that's not always the best option.
It's not. He knew he knew that also. But anyway, so that's what we talked about last night. And one more thing, the difference between the AR and the pistol grip shotgun. Pistol grip shotgun, you don't. AR, you bring up to your cheek and you mold and you take a shot.
Right.
Pistol grip, you hold down here. Don't do that. As soon as you do that, you're losing half your face. You hold it down here, and there's no butt to it. It's a pistol grip.
Yeah.
So you shoot it, and you're gonna feel that thing kick, man. It's gonna go bam. It's really gonna have a hard kick to it, but you get used to it.
Yeah.
First time I shot it was down here, and I was 3-4 foot off of where I thought I was shooting. So you've really got to get used to where it's going and how it feels before the projectile leaves.
Right. I imagine a gun like that is one best fired like with a big cigar. That's the image I get.
You could shoot it with a big cigar in your mouth.
Someone steps in, an intruder steps into your house with evil intent, and you step out from behind the hallway, sort of A-team style. I love it when a plan comes together.
It looks like, it's a good firearm. You know how some movies like to use a desert shield, what's it called?
Oh, the Desert Eagle?
Desert Eagle.
Yeah, the big.
Because it's just a honking gun.
Right.
You know what I mean? A lot of movies like to use those just because of the imposing figure that it
Right.
is. This is kind of the same way. You hold it. You can hold it like this. It's the one that I have is black, and you just you can.
Well, I've also read
really
and even heard like the sound, the chick chick sound itself is a deterrent.
I wouldn't want to count on that, but it would. It's a head turner.
You just have that sound on your phone.
That's
the
the ringtone. I like it.
Better not come in here.
Yep.
Chick.
I like that as a ringtone for sure. And there's something about that metal against metal. As the action goes, it's attractive.
Yeah.
Especially if it's nice and lubed and you can just hear it going.
Right.
There's something about that that's I think every red-blooded American redneck will say, that's good. That's good stuff right there.
Well, I mean, there's something about just like something that's nicely made and nicely functioning.
Mechanics.
The mechanics of it.
Oh,
I remember. So in the same vein, like there's a neighborhood here in Pensacola that has a lot of really old houses to it, like the old houses that have the site-built windows with the counterweights in them and all that kind of stuff. And it's really cool going in and seeing all this really old construction and like the mechanical ingenuity of it.
Yes,
like,
right.
You know, it's not like the way the attic access, you know, opens up and the ladder sort of slides out, but it's like this really old thing that works still really nicely a century later, because of the way it was made, the way the counterbalances work, you know, all this stuff.
As an engineer, you've got to really, that's really got to get
like
you going.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
And, you know, the same applies to, you know, well-made firearm too. Just the mechanics of it is appealing.
Chris and I talk about this a lot. I have many cameras. When I say I have many cameras in my office, it's really an understatement.
Oh, yeah.
I've got many cameras in my office, and those aren't even all of them.
You're the guest in your office.
Oh, man. I've got a lot of them. And I got most of them for a steal at thrift stores before they became before film cameras became popular again. But like one that you gave me that was your grandfather's, and I think some other ones that I have were made, when was it, Chris? 1920? 1919 in Germany before the war. And the first time I remember these cameras, the first time I took it out of wherever it was, I pushed the shutter. And by the way, you've got to look for the shutter. These things don't even look like cameras. Right. You got to look for the shutter, push the shutter, click, click. I went, my gosh, there's no telling how long ago that shutter was pushed the last time. 1919?
Yeah.
And the thing about those cameras back then, it had a lot of writing on it, you know, handmade stuff. There's nothing electronic even close to this thing. Yeah. And you start looking at it, you know, man, look at this. It's all, you know, analog stuff. Yep. Wow.
And you can adjust like the shutter speed. And it's all adjusted based on like springs and things like that are just perfectly calibrated.
Unbelievable.
Little analog devices.
I mean, it's beautiful. It is. I remember handing one to you for the first time. You looking at it, going, "Yeah, this is really something." It's fun to figure those things out too. Yeah, and they still work. There's no reason that they won't work. Right. You know, just because light works, stuff that closes works. You know, that all this stuff that requires a picture still works. Yeah, it's not going to. You got to stay real still. You know what I mean? If you want to get a good picture.
That's one of the discouraging things about, you know, not to go on like this old man rant about, you know, the way things aren't made the way they're used to, but it seems like there's a more so than just a planned obsolescence of things that are manufactured today. But like, you know, take digital cameras. Digital cameras are great. They're awesome. But it's I'm always afraid with digital pictures and stuff that the file format will change, and that at some point the files that I've stored on a hard drive or whatever will become obsolete, and there'll be something that won't read them or whatever. Like how much of our, and not only that, but like all of our digital archival processes or whatever, what's to happen when there's no permanence about them like there is to a hard piece of paper. You know, I have a postcard from my great grandmother that has a picture of a church in Sawdust, New York that still exists. That was there since the 1800s. That, you know, my great grandmother used to go to as a child, and that postcard still exists. And
that church still exists.
And that church still exists, right? But will the digital image of that church still exist in a century, or will it have long since, you know, degraded because of the storage medium it's on, or it's been erased because it's been, you know, an archive has been deleted or something like that. Right. Like, you know, 2 centuries from now, how will people be able to look back at the things that were going on today without all the, you know, hard historical records that we have access to from 2 centuries ago?
It's a great discussion in Camera Club. We meet once a month, second Saturday, in the same room as Gun Club, And we talk about that in the past. We've talked about how are we going to enjoy the past like we do today, and especially how we did 20 years ago by flipping through pictures.
Right.
It's true that there are more pictures taken now than ever, but they're more snapshots.
Yeah, they're not meaningful pictures.
They're not. We're not creating something. That's what
pictures used to be a process that you put a lot of thought into.
Right, and it's a creation.
Right.
Now they're snapshots. You're recording something that has happened in a second, which is okay, but you looking at it one time satiates you.
Mm-hmm.
You're fine. I was taking pictures of my nephews playing basketball a couple of years ago, and I took some pictures of them, blocking each other, laying up, and dunking, things like that. And I showed them on the screen of my digital camera. And they said, "Oh yeah, that's cool," and that's fine. That's all they needed. They didn't desire to have a picture, a copy of that, or anything. And they're so used to just seeing something, go, that's cool, and go on about it. And that's it, because they will have looked at 15 other pictures in the next 5 minutes of something else.
Well, even like the act of taking a selfie, it's not just you take one selfie. It's like you take a whole, like 20 selfies, and you like fine tune, like nitpick each one, see which one's the absolute perfect. So 1 out of 20 you're choosing or more. I remember as, my daughter wanted me to take a picture of her and her friends on their phone, and so I stood back and I did my thing. 1, 2, 3, click, hand it back to her. It's like, no, you're supposed to. I think they call it spamming. Like you're supposed to take like real quick, like 10 pictures. Oh,
is that right?
Yeah, you're supposed to click, 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 click. And then they go through them and pick which one they like the best.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't either.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so like, that's not something that. That's something that's relatively new to human history. Is just the ability to have a photo of something that easily that it's just it's not even thought about.
You know what I've realized of recently is that. All the photos that we're taking on our phones are like placeholders to a real photographer. A real photographer who creates photos, creates history, or historians. We have placeholders, so it can remind us that we were here taking this picture. I'll look at this picture and other pictures. And fine-tune them and be able to edit them and make them fit the story that I'm trying to tell. Now, just having placeholders is okay.
Yeah.
Because if you start, as a photographer, you do something called pixel peeping. You zoom in on the picture to see how clear it is. And depending on the more pixels you have, the more you can zoom in and it stays clear. The less pixels you have, the more you zoom in, the more it falls apart. It literally looks like it's just falling apart. Everything is not clear at all. And with most of our phones, regardless of how many pixels they have in a phone, they're different. Every pixel isn't the same.
Right.
A 45 megapixel in a phone is not the same as 45 megapixels in a Canon R5. Canon R5, 45 megapixels or 40 megapixels, whatever it is, you can zoom in a great deal and it still stays very, very clear. 45 pixels on a phone, you can zoom in a little bit more than normal, but not much, and it just starts going blurry and all that kind of stuff. Now placeholders are fine for most people, and that's what most people are doing, taking placeholder pictures and never looking at them again.
Right.
I mean, how many times have you sat down and looked through your phone and enjoyed just sitting there looking at pictures? Not very often.
Yeah.
As
usually
opposed,
when I'm trying to find something that I've taken a picture of in the past. Yeah.
Right. But not just for enjoyment. Like you pick up an album at your grandmother's, coffee table and go, "Oh, I remember this."
Yeah.
Those are meaningful times that we used to take for granted.
I always joke with my wife because she always makes these tremendous works of art of these like wedding cakes and cookies, decorated cookies and everything.
Best in town.
And we always. She always wants to take pictures of them so she can like use them for, advertisements on Facebook or whatever. and she always, kind of jokingly criticizes my picture taking abilities when I do it, because every time I take a picture for my engineering job, it's for documentation purposes.
Yeah, right.
And there's no artistic thought put in them. It's like, how can I maximize the amount of information, the useful information that's in this picture? And that's kind of what I do with her cakes. I'm taking pictures at her from different angles and all this stuff, so that if I were to, if I were required one day to recreate this cake, I would have sufficient information to do that. But it's not artistic.
It's not artistic.
and that's kind of like, when you go through all of my pictures, there's nothing artistic about them. All of my pictures are documenting something.
Right.
Either, something work related or something family related, or I have albums that document different things I design in 3D print, or I do on a laser cutter, or different gun things that I do. It's all documentation stuff.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
Numbers and letters on a screw that's 10 feet away.
Exactly.
You need to get that close sometimes in the shade.
Yep.
Right. So you have very specific needs.
Right. And so it's just it's funny, the different reasons that we feel things need to be documented or artistically represented.
Photography is a fun avenue of creation, and I thought about the next project that I'm going to do just for fun is dogs. Remember the Jerry Seinfeld thing on Netflix not long ago? Comedians in cars.
Oh, comedians in cars getting coffee.
Getting coffee.
Yeah.
I want to do one dogs in cars in Pensacola, or dogs in cars wagging something like that. And I want somebody to drive me around in my convertible Camaro, me in the back seat with my camera, and we just drive around town and find dogs with their heads sticking out of the windows in car. And I've started kind of doing that with my phone just to kind of get the feel of it, and I love it. It's so much fun because these dogs are always in the best moods. You know what I mean?
It's funny too because you're a cat person.
Well, I'm a dog person too.
Oh, okay.
Just circumstances.
Gotcha.
And I am a cat person. Absolutely. Absolutely a cat person. But I've had a lizard before. I am an animal person. Anyway, you don't see very many cats in cars.
Right.
But you see big dogs in cars. I on the way to Alpharetta a couple years ago, my gosh, it was the biggest daggone Great Dane I've ever seen in my life. And I was with my wife and my mother-in-law. We're at a stop sign, and I look over to the right, and I saw this little car, and this girl was just digging. She was listening to music. She was boom, 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 and I could feel the bass, boom, boom, boom. Next thing I knew, all I saw was a big head come out of the back window. He just stuck his head out, just looking around. Brought his head back in, and that was the second in my life I'll never forget. This big, huge dog, man. It just was the most beautiful. I think that's what started me thinking about taking pictures of dogs in cars. I see it a lot. I think we all do. But having that maybe on a Facebook page or something might be fun.
Yeah.
Who knows?
It would be a neat body of work to present. Yeah, there's a lot of art venues around town.
That's kind of what I'm. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking about doing. That'd be fun to do. Chris, totally. We need to do that. Maybe you can drive me around in my Camaro. I will. Anyway, so we had fun last night. I'll end my segment with this. Audiobooks. Been listening to audiobooks.
Yes.
And I've listened to Rush. One of my the band Rush.
Right.
And Neil Peart was a drummer. There's three members, Canadian. Neil Peart was a drummer. Gaddy Lee was the guitarist, and Alex Lifeson was a lead guitar and rhythm guitar, and Neil Peart was a tag on it. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to cut this out also, Chris. Neil Peart was the drummer. Alex Lifeson was the guitarist, and Gaddy Lee was the bassist.
Okay.
Now I say he was the bassist, But at some songs, get this now, Geddy Lee may have written the song. He's playing the bass, he's playing the keyboard, and he's playing foot keyboard at the same time, and making it look like it's nothing. The bass, double-headed bass too. So he's playing the bass, and his foot is making some rhythm and playing keyboard at the same time. My God, and singing. This guy was extremely talented. And Rush was one of my favorite bands, and my buddy Kent and I, and Robbie, and everybody in Lumberton, where I grew up, Lumberton, North Carolina. Rush was one of our favorite bands. So I listened to Geddy Lee's audiobook.
Okay.
And he's Jewish, and he talked about his parents were in concentration camps. His parents actually got married in a concentration camp. I mean, what an extraordinary story, right? Extraordinary story. And how, I mean, this is just, gosh, he's older than we are. He's older than me by 10 or 15 years. But his parents being in a concentration camp surprised me. That's only 2 generations away.
Right.
And they barely made it out. I mean, it was a...
Yeah, that kind of gives a really, I don't know, like, horrible view of the till death do you part.
Yes, right.
Because that would have likely been like within the next couple days.
Yeah, they miraculously. He talks about the way his mother tells him the story and the way he is telling the story. There's many times that everybody in the concentration camps came out, and this was called a certain thing, but they came out and they got in one line, and then they got separated into 2 lines. One line was going to the showers, and one line was going back to work. And this happened once a month or so. And at first they didn't know what was going on. Of course, after a while they figured it out, and they'd get called, and there's one person that he named in this particular camp would say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, and that determined their fate right then. That determined their fate right then. And his parents, every time they went through that, they were in the yes line. They survived to go back to work. I would imagine it had to do with health and whatever, being able to work or not being able to work, whatever it is. But they survived that whole thing. Many of his uncles didn't.
Yeah.
His aunts didn't. They were all the ones that were in this, and they got moved around. But the ones that ended before they were liberated, many of them didn't make it. And the way that they told the stories, man, it's so vivid and so sad that even after they were liberated, people kept dying because they were already sick.
Right.
I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
After the soldiers came in and liberated them, the ones that were already sick and dying, they saw the liberation, but they weren't able to hang on to make it to freedom again. How hard, how terrible. I mean, that's just one story that he told. But he went on to start talking about Rush and the band that he was in, and we kind of worshiped these guys, man. It was just such a unique rock and roll band, very time sensitive. It was musicians. None of them read music, but you would never think that they wouldn't. They were very unique in the way that they kept time. The drummer and the bassist would change their timing so much, and it would be. It's not something you could go boom, ba, 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 ba. It was just really 5/5, 4/4, 7/8, whatever it is. It's just really hard to keep up with, but very melodic. And it reminded me how we hold people up in our lives. People that we worship, people that we think are more than just a person. He started talking about the drummer, Neil Peart, one of the best drummers. Buddy Rich, your drummer, so you know who Buddy Rich is. Buddy Rich was his hero. So Neil Peart played like that. Just he had a drum set. You couldn't hardly see Neil Peart because his drum set was so massive.
Yeah.
And he played every bit of it. Every bit of it he played. I often wondered what happened to him, to the band, and they just kind of, he goes through the ins and outs of the band. But this guy Neil Peart, as good as he was, as persnickety as he was and as particular as he was about his music, just a man.
Mm-hmm.
He, in 1 year, he lost his wife and his daughter to ailment, to sickness, and that brought him to his knees. I'm thinking, man, this guy was on the top of he was on the top of his life, playing a musician. People were worshiping him because of what he could do, just what he could do, what he was gifted to do. People held him up, and he is not immune to all the stuff that we're immune to. He's just like us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He lost his daughter to my gosh, it's so heartbreaking. He rode a motorcycle. It's one of his passions, and whenever his daughter was going to college, he led her out to a certain place where she had her car packed, and she was taken off, and he just got on his motorcycle and led her out 5 or 10 miles down the road, and then said bye to her. Never saw her again. She got in a car accident and died. Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah.
How horrible. And his wife at the time never really recovered. Ended up dying from cancer less than a year later. What do you do?
Right.
There's nothing you can do. Here, this guy had as much money as he needed. You know, he had all the hobbies he wanted. He had the drum sets. He has motorcycles. But he didn't have. He just lost everything.
Right.
Just everything. And I can't help but think that on this, you know, if you're not a believer, how do you go through something like that and make it? How do you find hope on the other side? And all indications are that nobody in the band was a believer. But I can't. Well, Gaddy Lee says I don't believe in God. He's an atheist.
Yeah.
But this is his story, you know. So I can't say what the other two believed or whatever. But it just made me think: if you don't have that hope in Christ, how do you make it through these times? You know, losing your daughter, losing a best friend, losing whatever. How do you make it through those times without the hope of eternity or the hope of seeing these people again or anything?
Right.
You know, I'm thankful that I have that faith of that. It's not just about seeing somebody again. It's not just about it's not just about the afterlife. It's being grateful for what Christ has already done for us.
Yeah.
And not acknowledging that seems to me to be a misstep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And talking to somebody, we've had this conversation before about how do you talk to somebody who doesn't believe in the Bible, and whenever most of the things that you say are backed up by the Bible. Well, if you don't believe in that Bible, it doesn't mean anything to them, right?
Right.
So you talk about right and wrong. You have to get into that. Where is that right and wrong? To you, what is right and wrong? You know, if there's not a God, that's where our north is. Jesus Christ is our north. But if you don't have that north, where's your north? Well, your north can change anywhere, can it? You can say your north is over here. No, it's over here because I feel like it should be over here.
Yeah.
And
then what do you do when that shifts? What does that mean about where it used to be? Is that now wrong, or was it always wrong? And
right.
Yeah, it just opens up for a lot of chaos.
It does open up for a lot of chaos, and life is chaotic enough.
Yeah.
Even having our north being Christ, life is chaotic enough because there's people in it. We're in it. You know, we're the only ones that are perfect. Nobody else. Everybody else is, you know,
right.
They got problems. No, we're all messed up, man. You know, we're all in need of a Savior. We all need Christ, and it just breaks my heart to think that others don't have that.
Yeah.
You know, and I hope that our listeners and viewers use that as motivation to let other people know about it instead of being timid about approaching somebody, approaching a friend, or however you're going to evangelize like God has called us to do. Instead of being apprehensive about it because we might be embarrassed or not know answers, whatever. Just I try to use the long-term loss of life as a motivation to bring hope to somebody. I'm not always successful in that, Josh. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, you and Chris know me more than most people do. And I'm so glad that our conversations before we start recording are not recorded, because it would sound like two different people. Maybe they are. I don't know.
Two sides of the same coin.
Two sides of the same coin. But at least that's a goal. You know,
right.
My goal is to try to be a better representative of Christ. And man, I fail every day. Good gosh, I failed real bad the other day. But you know, I don't beat myself up about it. But at least I know that I was wrong in the past. Before Christ, I wouldn't have known that was wrong. I would have felt justified. You know, but. Anyway,
well, that's a similar, you know, what we're talking about today from the Bible study part is very similar to this, because we're talking about Jonah, and you know, for what you just said, you know, if you're timid about sharing the gospel, or you're you know, worried that you don't have all the answers when you're sharing the gospel. The other side of that is, you know, think of it from the perspective of, what was it? The guy from Russia, his grandparents that were in the Holocaust.
It was his parents.
His parents that were in the Holocaust.
Neil Peart.
You know, if
sorry,
you're,
Daddy Lee. Sorry.
Yeah. If you're a person of faith and you're in that situation, what is your responsibility for sharing the gospel to the people who are, you know, sorting that line, right?
That's a great analogy with Jonah.
Because that's exactly
really
what was
is.
in Jonah's,
Yes.
what Jonah was going through. It wasn't timid, you know, it wasn't him being timid or apprehensive or whatever. These were the people that were going to ultimately destroy his nation.
Can you imagine being asked to go to preach to a group that you despised?
It was a group of people who, through their entire history and your entire history, they have been your enemy. I mean, the Assyrians, the Assyrian Empire that took over the northern kingdom, because remember, after Solomon died, the nation of Israel split into the northern kingdom, which still maintained that name Israel, and the southern kingdom, which called itself Judah. And then the northern kingdom eventually got taken over by the Assyrians. It was directly a result of their constant insistence of getting away from God and rebelling against God and all this stuff. And God used one of their greatest enemies to eventually take them over. And Jonah was in a really interesting predicament too, because not only was he a member of this nation and knew that this Assyrian Empire was their enemy, the capital of this empire was Nineveh that he was called to. But Jonah wasn't the only one being called by God to be a prophet at this time. He was contemporary with Hosea and Amos. They were both prophets to the northern kingdom at the same time Jonah was, and they had similar messages. Amos kept warning the northern kingdom, saying, because of your rebellion, you're going to be forced out of your land. You're going to be spread farther than Damascus, you know, which was like saying you're going to be spread as far as you can get from your homeland, and you know, an empire is going to come and take you over. It's going to be a punishment for you, all this kind of stuff. Hosea at the same time was naming specifically Assyria is going to be the one to do it. So here you have Jonah, who's a prophet, and your other prophet friends, they're being called by God to talk to your friends and your family and say, look, you know, you guys are rebelling against God. You're going to get punished. You're going to get taken over. You're going to get spread across the nation. And your other friend Hosea is like, it's going to be the Assyrians. And you know, this nation that's been your enemy for generations, they're the ones that are going to do this to you. And now you are being called by God to go to the Assyrians, to their capital city of Nineveh, and tell them about God and warn them, like, if they don't turn away from their wicked ways, God's going to destroy them too. How, you know, that's not being, you know, that's not Jonah being timid. That's Jonah saying, no, I don't want to give
Right.
them this message. I don't want them to have any hope of salvation. I don't want them to, to be restored or anything. I want them to be destroyed because these are the enemies.
Right.
That's why, when you look at where Jonah was and where Nineveh was, Jonah didn't go to Nineveh. He went the exact opposite way. He went to Tarshish, which, depending on what map you look at, what you read, that was either the southern tip of Spain, which is on the direct opposite end of the Mediterranean Sea, or it was what's modern day Great Britain. So either way, total opposite direction as far as he could get away from it. And Jonah did that specifically. He's like, no, I am not telling the Ninevites about God. I'm not telling them to turn from their wicked ways. I want them destroyed because if they don't get destroyed, my two buddies over here are telling us they're the ones that are going to destroy us.
Right.
So I don't want to be part of that. And yet, throughout that whole thing, God keeps, we know the whole thing about, the storm coming on when he was on his way to Tarshish, him being thrown overboard, getting swallowed by a huge fish, spending 3 days in that fish and showing up on the shore, basically redirected by God back to the direction he was supposed to go. And that whole time, even though he like acquiesced and went to Nineveh, the whole time he's just like salty mood, doesn't want to do it. He does it anyway, but like he just, no part of him wants to be there. And God,
You had a really short altar call, is what you're saying.
yeah, really short altar call, right? Yeah.
You want to accept Christ, come down here. Okay, never mind, we're gone.
I don't see any hands.
Sorry.
You're right.
Jonah, we can't hear you. Well, is it Jesus Christ? Is it?
It's funny in our church. Whenever we have an altar call, I don't know. This might be just me that notices this. Our pastor, all heads bowed, every eye closed, and everything. Nobody looking around, and he asks for people to raise their hands, and then he starts this thing where he's like, I see one over there, over there, over there, over there, over there, over there, over there. And he starts saying that over. And in my head, I'm just like, I don't know why I do that. But, yeah. Because he just keeps that rhythm up.
Right.
Over there, over there, over there, over there, over there. Anyway. Total side note.
Salvation.
It's the salvation song.
Thanks. You ruined it for me.
Sorry, I think of weird things.
Next time that happens, I'm going to stand up and look for you. Josh.
I'll be in the back row, just bouncing.
Josh has got Tourette syndrome.
Anyway. That never really gets resolved in Jonah's life, it seems, because at the end of Jonah, this is Jonah chapter 4, verse 8. It came to pass when the sun did arise that God prepared a vehement east wind, and the sun beat upon the head of Jonah that he fainted and wished in himself to die and said, it is better for me to die than to live. And God said to Jonah, doest thou well to be angry for the gourd? So the backstory is it was really hot. God caused this gourd to grow and create shade for Jonah. And then a little while later, this vehement east wind came and it killed this gourd. And Jonah was really ticked off about that. And God said, doest thou well to be angry for the gourd? And he said, I do well to be angry, even unto death. So, this is how much Jonah is just hating his life right now. It's like, yeah, I feel sorry for the gourd. I wish I would just die. That's how bad I feel for this gourd.
Mm-hmm.
And then said the Lord, thou hast had pity on the gourd, for which thou hast not labored, neither madest it grow, which came up in a night and perished in a night. And should not I spare Nineveh, that great city, wherein are more than 60,000 persons that cannot discern between their right hand and their left hand, and also much cattle? That's where the book ends.
Yeah.
It
what else
never
you need?
says
That's a mic drop moment, really.
it is right?
A mic drop. Yes.
Like, this is a nation that has over a millennium of history behind it. This Nineveh was one of those cities that's mentioned right after the great flood of Noah, when mankind departed from the ark, started populating the plain of Shinar, and you have this guy Nimrod show up who founded a bunch of cities. Well, Asher, which is one of the descendants of Noah, is like the guy who started the Assyrian. That's what the Assyrian Empire is named after. Well, that city Nineveh was founded in part by as a result of what Nimrod was doing. Okay. So that's how old Nineveh is, and that's where Assyria gets its roots, is right after the flood. So all that time, this group of people have been growing and building an empire, and going through all the motions of humanity, and God basically says, like, you had pity on this little gourd. It was only around for a day. It wasn't a person. You didn't do anything to make that gourd grow or die or whatever. It's totally independent of you, and you felt pity for that gourd. How much more should I have pity for this entire empire who has over a millennium of history? And it's, what do you say, 6,000 persons, so 12,000 people, or 6,000. Yeah, so 12,000. Like, this is my creation as well, and it's a creation that is older than your people are, because the Assyrians were around before the Jews were, and so he leaves them with that, like, shouldn't I be concerned with these people? And the answer from Jonah never comes. It's more or less left as a rhetorical question for us, because this whole book of Jonah is an indictment on Israel, because Israel had the prophets. They had direct revelation from God. I mean, they stood at the base of Mount Sinai while God's presence engulfed the mountain in fire and spoke to them directly. They had the tabernacle where the presence of God dwelled, and they could see it. They had the temple where, same thing, presence of God dwelled, and they could see it. I mean, they had several hundred years of God directly intervening in their lives and communicating with them, and yet they still chose to rebel time and time again, go away from God, try to pursue the pagan practices of the nations around them, and all this stuff. And yet, time after time, prophets would come and warn them about this, and what did they do? They persecuted the prophets. They told them, don't tell us this stuff. And when they did tell them, they would persecute them. They would throw them in jail. They'd kill them, all this stuff. And so here, Jonah is being sent to the enemy that's going to destroy Israel. And in one message, Nineveh turns around. And it was an indictment on Israel. It's like, they only heard this once, and they turn around. And it kind of did two things. It postponed their destruction, but it also postponed Israel's destruction as well, because like the Assyrian Empire was not always the strong Assyrian Empire that had the ability to take over the northern kingdom. It got stronger and weaker over history, depending on different wars and stuff like that, and it was kind of on the decline shortly before this, but it kind of like awoke like a sleeping giant, and quickly got back to the point where it could take over the northern kingdom of Israel. And they eventually did turn back to their pagan ways,
right? And
which is why they did eventually turn back against the people of Israel, and took them over and became evil again, and God destroyed them. That's why there's not a Nineveh today. But yeah, I can just imagine it from Jonah's perspective. Is like, yeah, I know we're supposed to tell other people about God and, all that stuff, and God is good and God's great and all that, but not to these people.
I think we can apply that to our lives today, every day. People that we don't really know or more specifically care for. I mean, let's be honest, we don't. There's personality traits that conflict with each other, and we end up not really hanging out with somebody because we don't like them that much for whatever reason. Doesn't mean they're not responsible for helping to evangelize that person or to serve that person somehow or meet their needs or whatever it is. It's much easier to serve and to help those that we like or maybe don't know than it is somebody that we know and don't like.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
That's what this book is about, it sounds
It's funny, in the New Testament, a couple times this account is referred to, especially in like the description of the gospel, how Christ was he died, he was buried for 3 days, he rose again. He keeps saying according to the scriptures, and the analogy is drawn between like how Jonah was in the depths, in the belly of the fish for 3 days, and then was delivered back up, and like just as Jonah was in the belly for 3 days, Jesus was in the depths of hell for 3 days, and and all that. And then when Jesus is talking to Peter at one time, he recalls this account from Scripture, saying like, Jesus is the true means of salvation. It's through him that we have access into what used to be very restricted access to the presence of God. Now it's through Jesus that we have that access, and it's available for everybody, not just the Jews, but also the enemies of the Jews, and people who are the enemies of God. Like he opens that up for salvation to everyone. Well, looks like we've lost cameras.
We'll go ahead and wrap it up.
But
there,
we'll go and
Joshy.
wrap it up. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Josh. Thanks for that scripture lesson.
Yep.
All right. See y'all next week.
See ya.